You know her, Helima Croft. She does this for a living. So you heard the conversation around the table, Helima. It's a supply and a demand issue, right?
Of course. And I think today's move was really driven by headlines that OPEC Plus might consider adding additional barrels when they meet on Sunday. Now, they have officially written off the 2.2 million voluntary cut. The question is, do they move on to this 1.65 million voluntary cut? Do they start slowly unwinding that? The one thing I would say, though, is that is a big headline number, but the reality is that most of the OPEC producers are producing basically at full capacity. So when we talk about any incremental add right now, we're really only talking about a small number of countries that can put on those additional barrels. So it'd be Saudi Arabia, the lion's share, and then potentially some smaller incremental adds from UAE and Kuwait. But again, it will not be the full headline 1.6, just as it wasn't 2.2. It was really only about half of that came onto the market. And before today's price action, early in the week, we had Brent sort of, approaching $70 as there were concerns about what's the path forward on Russian production, what's the Trump administration policy going to be towards Russia. So again, I think we do have to pay attention to what happens on Sunday, and I don't think a decision has been made yet on what the policy will be.
Helima, I know you focus a lot on OPEC and its partner countries, OPEC Plus. How much of this story can really be influenced by the U.S. production that could be coming online and an administration that is looking to put more of a medium to longer term tailwind behind oil and gas when it comes to capacity here in America?
Well, so if we go to the fourth quarter, there is a concern in the market about an oversupply situation, not just because of, the United States, but because of countries like Brazil, Guyana production coming on, and a concern that we're going to start to see a growth in stockpile, that essentially China has been doing a lot of buying. Will they basically say we're tapped out, and will we start to see inventory builds in visible markets? Like that is the theory of the case for a very shaky fourth quarter for oil markets. Again, what we simply don't know is what the OPEC policy is going to be. And frankly, as we look out to next year, we see U.S. production declining because this is not an optimal price for U.S. production to grow. So in a sense, OPEC and these sovereign producers that have lower cost of production, they are going to be more in a dominant position going forward.
Helima, it's Karen. Thanks for being with us. Talk to us about peak shale.
So again, if we look at the really important question is, at what price do you need to sustain really robust U.S. production growth? And this has been the sort of, I think, contradiction or the confusing part of the Trump policy, because he is very much a baby drill president. He really talks about American energy dominance, not just from an economic story for the U.S., but also for a foreign policy story. But the price points that he throws out when he talks about wanting oil at $50, potentially low 60s, that's not an optimal price for U.S. production to sustain growth levels. So again, the question is going forward, if we stay in this muted price environment, where are the additional barrels coming from? Now, production is set to come on from Brazil and Guyana because those are more long lead time projects. And that production is coming on regardless of price. But the U.S. is much more price sensitive. So if we stay in this muted price environment, we have the expectation that we will see declines from U.S. producers next year.
Helima, I'll use the term, it, our audience knows as well, but crack spreads continue to widen, and the companies that buy crude and sell refined products are winning. And that's been going on now for a while. Do you think that continues?
Again, so for me, I don't really cover the companies, but I just would say as we look out towards the end of the year, I do think we have to, again, pay attention to a couple key factors. Where do we think China is going to shake out? Because we do have a lot of concerns over the economic situation in China. Are we going to see China essentially, slow down? What does that mean for really builds across the complex? Are we going to start to see crude builds in very visible markets? What has been helping the oil price, over summer is that we haven't seen crude builds in visible markets. So do we start to see a real change as we go into Q4, when we're expecting a more seasonally soft market. Again, I think there's a lot to be sort of up in the air in terms of how OPEC has to think about this, because if you are going to start to bring on more barrels, the question is, like, how would you calibrate it given the concerns that are out there?